Hi everyone, we are back again on this series of IFRS SLFRS 15 Revenue from Contract with Customers. So in last 3 or 4 videos I explained you the third step as a beginning because I want to show you how that gets interconnected with the other steps, and it is the major component of the revenue recognition. So now we get back to our model, 5-step model, and I would like to explain certain things again. Revenue from contract with customers is a comprehensive model, covers up its principle of revenue recognition. The revenue recognition, it says when and how much to recognize as revenue. So that is covered with this 5 model. It looks very simple. So you have to understand the macro picture of this 5 model, the principle underlying this, and whatever the steps are whatever the steps are implying or explicitly saying what, how and when the recognition of revenue can take place. Because I told you revenue recognition was subject to very many manipulation in the past, and IASB is trying to control it through this standard newly adopted from 1st January 2018. So the revenue from contract with customers is a single and comprehensive model. It covers up all the revenues of all the industries in this 5 simple model. It looks very simple, but it has its nitty-gritties. If you go into it, each step covers a lot of things, and these 5 steps are not independent. You should understand that. These 5 steps are not independent, it is interconnected. It is interconnected. We will see how it is when I am going to explain. I am going to explain you today step 1 and subsequently steps 2, 4 and 5. So we go one by one. So today I am going to take up step 1, identifying the contract. Before getting into the depth of step 1, we have to understand the macro picture of this model. This model, generally the accounting models goes with 5 topics or 5 components. That is objective, definitions, recognition, measurement and disclosures. So this is also the same. We know the definitions, we know the objective. Objective is to recognize revenue, how much and when, from the ordinary activities. So the definitions are, what is revenue? It is the revenue from ordinary activities like selling goods and services. Then the definition of each step will have its own definitions of the topics. So when we are going into it, we will see that. As and when we go along, we will go through the definitions as well. Then next is recognition and measurement. We are not explicitly or openly seeing the recognition and measurement on this 5-step model. It's hidden. If you see, step 1, 2 and 5 are talking about recognition. And step 3 and 4 are talking about measurement. That's how it's split. Step 3 and 4 are for measurement. Step 1, 2 and 5 are for recognition. So you should know to recognize and measure the revenue. You have to measure the revenue, finally to recognize it in step 5. Even this standard is very strict to make sure that there is a contract for accounting purposes. You should understand those principles in which this standard is formulated. because this standard is formulated for accounting purposes. not for legal purposes. So legal purposes you may have so many contracts, but for accounting purposes, whether you have a contract, you have to identify through these standards in this step 1. So the standard is for the accounting purposes. You should understand that. Then the other point is application of these steps. A person who is going to enter into a contract, we take it for granted that all these 5 models, so 5 steps have to be applied for. But that's not the case. You can apply or you can skip one step if you want to, because of the facts and circumstances of the contract. For example, you identify a contract according to step 1. Okay, there's a contract. And you identify a performance obligation. For that contract, only one performance obligation, for example. Then you determine the transaction price. So that transaction price is for that particular performance obligation. Then you can skip step 4. You need not to allocate the transaction price because there is no several performance obligations. So it doesn't mean that all 4 steps are necessary. You can skip 1 or 2 as and when necessary, depending on the facts and circumstances. It is not compulsory. You can skip if you want to, but you can't skip step number 1. You have to be careful. You have to identify that there is a contract. And other thing, the order of the steps. That is another critical point, that we take it for granted. We will apply step 1, then only step 2, then only step 3, and so on. These steps are not independent. I told you that these steps are not independent. When you are deciding on step 1, there are 5 criteria that you have to decide. All the criteria have to be satisfied to confirm that there is a contract for accounting purposes. Remember that, accounting purposes. Then to decide on that, there is a criteria, the 5th criteria is called collectability. We will come to it and I'll explain it in detail later. So to decide on the collectability, you should know the transaction price. Because the transaction price step decide on the variable consideration. There can be some variable consideration involved in determining the transaction price at the inception of the contract to decide whether there is a contract existing because of the 5th clause talking about the collectability. Then what do you do? For example, another step, step 2, identifying the performance obligation. When you are identifying the performance obligation, I will explain to you. You have to identify whether the goods and services are distinct or not. If it is distinct, whether it is delivered or satisfied at a point of time or over a period of time. If it is over a period of time, you have to get back to step 5. How the revenue can be recognized over a period of time. So you have to decide on those things to come back to step 1 and step 2. So these steps are interconnected. That's what I am trying to tell you. These steps are interconnected and you have to think about the other steps as well when you are thinking about step 1 or step 2. So you have to have an overall clear idea about this model. Otherwise you will make mistakes in your examinations because your mind is not clear. Don't try to remember anything, just a flat memory without understanding the principles. You understand the whole, you understand the macro picture, you understand the micro picture, the nitty-gritties, everything if you understand. When you see or when you read a scenario, you are not going to make a mistake because you are very clear how the transaction can be treated. So that is my objective of explaining this to you in this video. So we will continue with step number 1. Okay, now we will see what is the step 1. It says identify the contract. So you have to make sure that first there should be a contract existing for SLFRS 15 purposes. So a contract according to SLFRS 15 or IFRS 15 creates enforceable rights and obligation between a vendor and its customer. It's a must. It should create. Enforceable, that word is underlined, because enforceable is a matter of law. That is, to enforce it, if you go to courts, it should be accepted. It's a matter of law. The laws can change in different countries in different way, and even within the contract to contract, the practices and the contract and everything will vary. But at the same time, the standard says this enforceable rights and obligation should be covered by 5 criteria. Now, these standards are like law. In law, we find sections. In these standards, we find paragraphs. So all this time I was not talking about paragraphs. If it is essential only, I will mention the paragraph, otherwise it's confusing for you. Another thing is, for chartered accountants, it's an open book examination and you can carry the standard book to the exam hall. So you can refer the paragraphs if you want to, if it is not time wasting. Or if you are very much thorough with the standards, then it's not necessary, in my opinion. Here, the paragraph 9, SLFRS 15 or IFRS 15, paragraph numbers are the same. So paragraph 9 says there are 5 criteria. All have to be met for the contract to be in existence for the purpose of SLFRS 15 or IFRS 15. There can be legal contract, don't confuse with that. There can be legal contract. We are not worried. We are worried according to the accounting standard where there is a contract exists for accounting purposes. For what? To recognize the revenue. Because revenue recognition is very strictly observed through this standard. So they are putting all the measures, tight measures, not to manipulate that. So what happens? These 5 criteria, we will run through it. One is the contract has been approved by the parties to the contract. It should be approved by both parties or 2-3 parties or whatever it is. Both parties have to approve that. That means they have to agree. This agreement can be in writing, but need not to be in writing. It can be oral or customary practices. But it should be enforceable. It should be enforceable. It's connecting with the law. So you have to be careful. It's an enforceable rights and obligation, and this contract should be approved by these parties. If a company who has a practice of having written agreement, so they have formed a contract, they have typed the contract, it is still not signed by both parties. Whether you can execute or can you take it as the contract has satisfied this A is a question, because when there is a practice, though we have to think like this, though the standard says it can be either in written, orally or customary business practices. It is not insisting that it has to be in writing. But this company has a practice of having a written agreement and it is not signed. So if it is not signed, it is an evidence that the both parties are not in agreement. Then you can't go and say, no, a written agreement is not necessary. I can execute this contract. No. The facts and circumstances says that this contract is still not approved. You have to be careful in considering the facts and circumstances. And you have to have in mind that these have to be enforceable. So we come to the second criteria. Identify each party's rights regarding the goods and services which are going to be transferred by the entity. What are the rights each party has? Everything should be clearly mentioned. Then the third one, identify the payment terms. The payment terms. There can be a price concession. If there is a price concession, whether that will be deducted later or considered at a later stage, the payment terms, how the consideration is going to be paid by the customer. Where is at a point in time or a period of time or in advance or in arrears. All these things have to be decided, clearly identified. Then D, the contract should have a commercial substance. This word is not understood by the students sometimes. Commercial substance means the activities in the entity should result in either profit or loss. That's what it's defined as. There should be a change in risk, timing or amounts of the future cash flows. That means what? These things will change only if there is an activity which will result in a profit or a loss. So it has a commercial substance. The transaction should have a commercial substance. Then E. This is a famous E. Party or the category E is very important because it's talking about the collectability criteria. That means whether the entity can collect the consideration to which it is entitled. It can just collect. It is entitled for 100,000, it can collect 50,000. So it should be able to collect the consideration which it is entitled in the transferring of goods and services. Has to be confirmed. Here comes an interconnection. Because to decide on this E, you have to consider the step 3. You should know the transaction price and the variable consideration. If there is any price concession that is in customary practice, the customer can offer that. Or the customer's intention. Sorry, not the customer, the entity's intention. Entity's intentions to give the price concession. Price concessions are given by the entity, not the customer, I'm sorry. So it has to be decided by the entity. Those things are considered in step 3. We studied variable consideration. So if there is any variable consideration, we have to consider that to make sure that the collectability criteria is working or not. The collectability criteria should work. It should be entitled in exchange of goods or services to be transferred to the customer. When the collectability criteria is to be decided, the standard says the entity has to consider the ability and intention of the customer to pay the consideration. In other words, there is a credit risk of the customer. Ability and intention. It can change. It can change. We will see how it will be accommodated. Now, all these 5 criteria have to be met. All have to be met to make sure that there is a contract. Suppose one of these criteria are not met. That is one option. Or the criteria has been met, and what happens? Later, something changes. How we are going to do it? So the standard says these things. One is, if these 5 criteria are met, then there is a contract existing. So you have assessed it. The contract is in existence. So you need not to go and reassess it every time unless there is a significant changes in the facts and circumstances. Unless there is a significant change in facts and circumstances, you need not to go and reassess that. It's not necessary. But if the criteria is not met, what are we going to do? Then the standard say, okay, there is another para, 20. This 15.9, 15.15. There is another para, 15.15. Number 15. Go to that para. It says what to do if the criteria is not met and some of the consideration the customer has paid some advance. What are you going to do with that? This is not met and the standard says no, there is no contract. You can't do anything, you can't recognize revenue. So what are you going to do with the money what you are receiving or received from the customer? So we will see that subsequently. We will now see what is the para 15. IFRS 15. Para says if 15.9 that all 5 criteria has not been met and there are considerations that has been paid by the customer meanwhile. What can it do? It can recognize the consideration what was received by the customer as revenue if one of these events have happened. What are those 2 events? The entity has no remaining obligation to transfer any goods or services to the customer, or all the consideration promised has been received and non-refundable. You have satisfied all the performance obligations, or you have satisfied all the goods and services you have supplied, and all the monies have come and it is non-refundable under any circumstances. Then you can recognize that as a revenue. If 15.9 is not met, or the contract has been terminated. No, this won't work out. We have terminated the contract, but there are some deposit paid by the customer. It is non-refundable, so you take it as a revenue. So the standard allows the 15.15, according to the 15.15, the paragraph number 15, either of these 2 events should happen to recognize as a revenue. So, to recognize revenue, there should be a contract, and the contract should satisfy all 5 criteria, and those 5 criteria are not met. Then you go and check whether either of these 2 events have happened. If both are not happened, that means 15.9 is not met, 15.15 also nothing has happened, then what are you going to do with the money? Treat it as a liability until one of these events happens or the criteria is met. That's what is the standard say. I hope I have made it very clear to you. Then we can do some worked examples. Then it will make things clear. I will do a worked example now. Then it will make you clear to understand these guidance or these principles. Okay, we will see an example. A real estate developer enters into a contract with a customer to sell a building. The consideration is $1 million. The customer what he is going to do is, he is intending to open a restaurant in that building and pays a $50,000 advance. It's an initial deposit. But the problem is here, the restaurant business in that area is highly competitive. And this customer has little experience. Anyway, what customer is doing is, he is paying 50,000 and coming to a long-term loan arrangement with the entity for the 95%, the balance consideration on a non-recourse basis. Non-recourse basis meaning is that suppose the customer default, he is unable to pay the installment or interest or whatever it is. What happens? The entity can repossess the building. The entity has spent $600,000 to build that building. So the entity can repossess the building. But anything beyond that, he can't go and ask the customer for anything beyond that for any compensation. The collateral doesn't cover the full amount. He can't go and ask the customer for the full compensation. So there is a chance that the entity can make a loss on that deal. Under this situation, the entity is assessing. So the entity has assessed that this contract has a problem. What is that? The E 15.159E collectability criteria is not met. Because of this reason, the customer is intending to pay the loan and the installment and interest and everything from his restaurant income only. He doesn't have any other assets or no other income. And it is a high risk, significant risk because of the high competition. Then the customer doesn't have enough experience. He has only little experience. So succeeding in the business is very unlikely. And the loan arrangement is non-recourse. So the entity assesses this contract didn't meet the criteria of 15.9. The para number 9, it didn't meet the criteria. So what it has to do? It has to go and check whether 15.15, those two events, whether it has happened, whether it has substantially received all the consideration, or the contract has been terminated. To see those two also haven't happened. So what is the other option? The entity has to keep this 50,000 as a deposit liability. It can't recognize that as an income. Even subsequently, if the customer pays any loan, installment, interest or anything like that, it has to keep it as a deposit liability. Until, the standard says, until reassess, until such time they have to reassess either 15.9 is met or 15.15 is met. Either these two, either of these two is satisfied, they can't recognize revenue. So these decisions are made when at the time of deciding the step 1. Remember that step 1. So the step 1 and step 3 are linked. That's what I would like to explain to you this video. We'll continue the other lectures. I have to do contract modification. I will do it in my next video. Until then, take care. Good luck.